out to the source of our breath. We cry out because the one that made hearing does hear. The one who formed the eye does see. We cry out to disturb and to interrupt the uneasy silence of those who are asleep in order to rouse them from their beds with the cry, awake, awake, put on strength, O Zion. We cry out to the source of our breath. Church, we, just like George Floyd, just like so many black people being abused and dehumanized on the streets of our cities, have lost our breath. And the collective prophetic voice of the church has seemingly caught laryngitis. We're in the middle of a civil rights movement that for the first time in the history of black America, the church is not at the forefront. The moral voice of black America is missing from the dialogue. The church has lost its breath and needs to be resuscitated. Is burning from the East Coast to the West Coast, that he would get up and try to unite people, try to bring people together, try to condemn the social injustice that brought us to this point. But no, he wants to thugify black folk. When white folk came to Michigan, armed to the teeth, carrying AR-15 rifles, dressed in combat gear, somebody carrying nooses and waving racist Confederate flags. He called them very good people and demanded that the governor of Michigan cut a deal with them and talk to them. But when black folk came to protest the unjust murder of black people, he called us thugs. Yeah, thugification, demonization, and criminalization are all attempts at ultimately dehumanizing us. Because if we can prove that someone is less than human, then we can justify killing them. I can get killed on the street for no reason, shot in the park for playing with a toy, choked to death just because, murdered for being black in a white neighborhood, shot in my car while rushing home to get medicine for my daughter, killed in the stairway for trying to catch an elevator, gunned down in Walmart for holding a toy, all for no price, for no ransom, for no reward, just because I've been labeled as less than human. Oh my God, I'm black, I'm other, I'm not like them. My music is too loud, so I should get killed. My hair is too kinky, so I should get killed. My hair's too nappy, too dreaded. My pants are too saggy. My shoes aren't tied. I'm wearing a hoodie. I walk too fast. I look intimidating. I'm a threat, a menace, a societal scourge, a community casualty, a neighborhood nuisance. I can't win. I can't get a job. I can't get a raise. I can't get a promotion. I can't find no respect. I can't get the benefit of the doubt. I can't make ends meet. I can't breathe. What do I do when I can't breathe?
As people of faith, we cherish a democracy that guarantees freedom of speech, freedom of worship, and a vote for every citizen. Throughout a contentious and divisive political battle, communities and congregations and families have struggled to maintain respect and love for each other. It's time that we do the hard work of repairing the damage in relationships we value and cherish and upon which all democracies rely. As President Lincoln wrote, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." We invite all people of faith to accept the outcome of this election. Joe Biden has been announced as the president-elect. Attempts to delay the peaceful transition of leadership risk endangering our democracy in critical ways. We are all proud of our place in this democracy and owe it to our country to unify. If not in celebration of the announced winner, at least in the belief that the common good is served by honoring the outcome of this election.
For justice.
Here in Springfield!
City Council President Justin Hurst spoke to a crowd of several hundred in the East Forest Park neighborhood of Springfield.
What happened to Mr. Floyd on the streets of Minneapolis came dangerously close to happening right here in this parking lot.
There's an Advanced Auto, a Bank of America, and a pub, Nathan Bill's, where 4 black men were beaten by off-duty police officers in 2015. Store owners boarded up their buildings in anticipation of the protest. Reverend Talbert Swann is president of the Springfield chapter of the NAACP.
I want you to pay attention to the backdrop. I guess they thought we wouldn't know where Nathan Bill's was if they covered up the sign and boarded up the building.
Swann said Springfield Mayor Dominic Sarno and other city officials have been complicit with police violence, and he spoke of the civil unrest in Minneapolis and other cities.
I want you to understand that the reason it hasn't happened here is because we have not got to that tipping point yet. But I submit to you, we are one incident away from a powder keg blowing up here in the city of Springfield.
Ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people don't stop. What? Ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people don't stop.
Good afternoon, change makers!
Dr. LaToya Bosworth, who emceed the protest, offered up a poem of her own.
It has to happen. That dreaded conversation. Set aside feelings of hysteria and trepidation. Bring the knowledge, history, and logic. Similar to the message, life ain't been no crystal stair. A black woman has to forewarn her son that he is among the hunted and feared.
There was a thunderstorm brewing. Wind picked up. Crowds of locust blossoms making mini tornadoes in the air.
Let's march in the name of Springfield, in the name of George Floyd. Let's go!
Hey, I'm black and I'm proud!
The rain held off, mostly. The crowd, including at least 3 city councilors and Congressman Joe Kennedy III, met up in a circle at a nearby park. Reverend Swann said a final prayer. Back outside Nathan Bill's, I ran into a man named Tony Taylor. He's black, a union leader. He says he has every reason to be afraid in this city.
It's 3 o'clock in the morning. A cop will stop me and ask me, what am I doing out? I'm a grown-ass man, and this stuff has to stop.
Doesn't matter what form of protest we take on. They said you ought to be more like Dr. King. And I have to remind all of white America, when Dr. King locked arms and marched nonviolently, y'all put water hoses on them. You sick dogs on them. You put batons upside their head. You shot them and killed them and murdered them and lynched them in the street when we were nonviolent. How dare you tell us to go back to being nonviolent when you didn't hear us then? It really doesn't matter what form of protest we take to redress our grievances. White America is yet not willing to hear us. The president said yesterday that we hear you. He said, we hear your pleas. We support the right to nonviolent protest. He's a liar and his mama is too. down police stations in order to get your attention. And wait, let me pause parenthetically right there and say unto you, I'm tired of y'all who are tripping about Target being looted, but you ain't tripping about the targets of white supremacy being murdered. Oh, God help me preach it. We got to cry out to the source of our breath. We cry out because the one that made hearing does hear. The one who formed the eye does see. We cry out to disturb and to interrupt the uneasy silence of those who are asleep in order to rouse them from their beds with the cry, awake, awake, put on strength, O Zion. We cry out to the source of our breath. Church, we just like George Floyd, just like so many black people being abused and dehumanized on the streets of our cities, have lost our breath. And the collective prophetic voice of the church has seemingly caught laryngitis. We're in the middle of a civil rights movement that for the first time in the history of black America, the church is not at the forefront. The moral voice of black America is missing from the dialogue. The church has lost its breath and needs to be resuscitated.
You are my strength, strength like no other, strength like no other, reaches to me. Say it again, y'all. You are my, yes, come on. Strength like no, strength like, hey, and it reaches to me. Come on, let's say it again. You are, come on. You are my strength, strength like no other, strength like no other, reaches to me. And in the fullness of your grace and the power of your name, you lift me. Y'all like this song, huh? Come on, you lift me up. You lift me up. Come on, in the fullness, come on. So in the fullness and the power, you lift me up. Oh Lord, come on, you are my strength. Open up your mouth. You are my, oh, strength like no other. And I'm so glad that I know you. Yeah, 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 yeah. You are my strength like, oh Lord, strength like, and it reaches. Come on, cause in the fullness, everybody. So in the and the power, Lord, you lift me up like nobody else can do. You lift me up. Oh, hey, and the power, strength like no. Come on. Strength like, and it reaches. Come on, Lord, you are my strength. You are my. Oh, strength like no other. Strength like no other. Say it again. You are my strength. Come on. You are my. In my midnight hour when my body's racked with pain. Strength like no other. When the devil tries to torture my mind. One more time. You are my strength. Come on, say it. You are my. Oh. And it reach. So in the fullness of your grace and the power of your name, you lift me up. You lift me up. So in the fullness, Jesus, of your wonderful grace and the power, when I call your name, you lift me. You heal my body and you touch my mind. Oh, so in the fullness and the power, you lift me up. Love lifted me, yeah. Hallelujah. Come on, let's say it again. Come on. In the fullness of your grace and the power of your name. Yeah, 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 yeah. Let's say that 2 more times together. Come on, everybody. So in the full. And hallelujah. Lord, you lifted me up. One more time, let's say it together. Let's be on one accord. So, in the power. Oh, you lift me up. You lift me up. Love lifted me. Love lifted me. When nothing else could help, love lifted me. Love lifted me. Love lifted me. When nothing else could help, love lifted.
I want to preach this morning from the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 30. And I want to read it in your hearing, the 7th through the 15th verse. It is the tradition in the church that I pastor that we stand for the reading of the word. And if you would stand in reverence to the reading of the Lord's word. 1 Samuel 30, 7 through 15. And David said to Abiathar the priest, Ahimelech's son, I pray thee, bring me hither the ephod.
And Abiathar brought thither the ephod to David, and David inquired at the Lord, saying, Shall I pursue after this troop? Shall I overtake them? And he answered him, Pursue, for thou shalt surely overtake them, and without fail recover all. So David went, he and the 600 men that were with him, and came to the brook Besor, where those that were left behind stayed. But David pursued, he and 400 men, for 200 abode behind, which was so faint that they could not go over the brook Besor. And they found an Egyptian in the field, and brought him to David, and gave him bread, and he did eat. And they made him drink water. And they gave him a piece of cake of figs, and 2 clusters of raisins. And when he had eaten, his spirit came again to him, for he had eaten no bread nor drunk any water 3 days and 3 nights. And David said unto him, To whom belongest thou, and whence art thou? And he said, I am a young man of Egypt, servant to an Amalekite. And my master left me, because 3 days agone I fell sick. We made an invasion upon the south of the Cherethites, and upon the coast which belongeth to Judah, and upon the south of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire. And David said to him, Canst thou bring me down to this company? And he said, Swear unto me by God that thou wilt neither kill me nor deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will bring thee down to this company. Before you take your seats, repeat today's message with me. Just look at somebody, look them right in the eye. If you owe them some money and you can't look them in the eye, look at the bridge of their nose and just tell them, neighbor, I'm still here. You may be seated. My sisters and brothers, it's a wonderful thing just to be able to survive. Wild animals live to survive, because if they don't, they will become extinct. Even when a person is stripped of everything, there's an instinct in them. There's still something in them that declares, I want to live. I want to survive. It's good to strive, but when you've been through, it's a miracle just to survive. You've been sick, abused, disgusted, and broke, but you made it through. You are a survivor. It's a miracle, because some of you, even here right now, should not have made it, but you did. And whenever we read this text here, we usually begin with the story of David's agony after finding that the Amalekites had burned Ziklag with fire, took his children, took their wives, and we focus on the fact that David's men turned on him and wanted to stone him to death. And because David had enough experience with God, we focus on that particular text that said David encouraged himself in the Lord. And we go off and we preach that, hoop that, shout on that, and leave the rest of the story alone. But here in the story, what often gets lost is the story and the plight of this young man from Egypt who takes ill and is left by the Amalekites behind to die. And many people miss the importance of David's story, for the story in the text not only teaches us the importance of encouraging ourselves in the Lord, but it teaches us how God works in the midst of our pain. You see, everybody can't be David. Somebody's got to be the Egyptian man that was left to die. The man was helped and brought to David, and some of you may know the deep and abiding pain of being abandoned. You may have been treated like gold by somebody for a while, and then when you no longer are useful to them, they dropped you like a bad habit. Dropped you like you were insignificant, and this type of experience can be very painful, and there are some who may know what it feels like to go from being wanted to being unwanted, to go from feeling loved to feeling unloved, to go from feeling needed to feeling unneeded. Well, this man in our text was left behind to die because he became sick, and many have been rejected because of things that are beyond their control. You've been faithful, you've been helpful, you've been dutiful, but yet you were kicked to the curb. But here's the good news: while the man was left to die, he didn't die. And I just came by here to serve somebody. Notice that being left for dead doesn't mean that you have to die. For this man was kept alive by God to serve a purpose to bless God's people. You see, God still saw him as necessary, even though his master didn't feel he had any significance anymore or any value. And so my first point, my sisters and my brothers, is that no matter what you've gone through, no matter what your plight is in life, no matter what your socioeconomic status is, no matter what your educational background is, no matter what mistakes you may have made in your life, you are still valuable to God. Matter of fact, you ought to turn and tell somebody you're still valuable to God. You see, the man in our text was still important. He was still significant. And that's a word for somebody here today who's been dropped and dumped and dismissed and discarded and left behind and kicked to the curb. Sisters and brothers, don't you ever tie the meaning and the value of your life and your experience to the conflicts and opinions and attitudes that other folk might have about you. Don't let somebody else prognosticate about your future, because your meaning and your significance and your value ought not be determined by them. It ought to be determined by your God. You see, when people see you as useless, God sees you as useful. You're significant to God. You're meaningful to God. You are loved by God. You are cherished by God. You are valuable to God. Have I got any radical people in the building today that'll look at their neighbor like you got an attitude and say, I'm still valuable to God? Oh, you ought to shake your head at them like black women do when they mean what they say, and tell them, I may not be valuable to you, but I'm valuable to God. And how valuable are you? I'm glad you asked. You're valuable enough for God to still wake you up in the morning, for God to still breathe breath in your body, for God to still keep you alive, for God to keep you moving, to keep the malignant forces at bay that wanted to destroy you. You're still valuable to God. This man was left for dead, and he was as good as dead in the minds of those who dumped him, dropped him, discounted him, discarded him, dismissed him. He was easy prey for any predator who wanted to take him out, and yet he remained alive. God kept the vultures and the lions and the bears and the wolves and the snakes and the hyenas away from him, because God had purpose for him and he was valuable to God. In the absence of sunscreen, God kept him from sunstroke. God kept him alive. And I wonder if there's anybody here today who's not ashamed to testify that God kept me alive when I was in a weakened condition. Come on, somebody, you ought to go ahead and testify. Look at your neighbor and say, God kept me alive. You see, God kept you from opportunistic entities that wanted to capitalize on your vulnerability. God protected you from all of the hoochie mamas and the gold diggers. God help me in here. God protected you from the pimps and the players and the sugar daddies. God kept you from the blazing heat of adversity. God didn't let it take you out. And why did he do it? Because you matter to God. Because you're important to God. He did it because you are significant. He did it because you have purpose. He did it because he ain't through with you yet. And he did it because there's a rhyme and there's a reason to your life, and you are important. You're important to God. Oh, yes, you are. If you ever again doubt your importance or your value, all you got to do is look back over your shoulder and see what God has already brought you through. See what God already kept you from. You can look back over your shoulder and remember when nobody thought you would make it, and the truth be told, you doubted your own survival, but yet God kept you in the midst of all of it because you are somebody special. Matter of fact, you ought to look way back at the door and just point and say, look where the Lord brought me from. I wish I had somebody that felt like that today, that'll tell somebody that you ain't seen nothing like this. I'm special to God. I'm valuable to God. I'm one of a kind. When God made me, he broke the mold. You don't have to appreciate me, but I'm a gift to somebody because of God. You see, you got to get you got to get beside yourself sometime, and you got to just look in the mirror when you get up in the morning and say, Lord, you knew what you was doing, Lord. Come on, somebody. If you don't appreciate me, God appreciates me. I'm valuable to God. What's this? The man in the text, he's been wounded, he's been dropped, abused, mistreated, talked about, lied on, looked over, kicked to the curb, disrespected, left for dead, but God kept him alive. And that might be somebody's testimony here today. You're looking at your life and saying, my haters said I'd never make it. My enemies thought I was gone. My critics said I didn't matter. They did everything they could to hurt me, to destroy me, to discourage me, to ruin my reputation. But somehow, some way, God kept me alive. I must be somebody special. I shouldn't be here right now. My credit was jacked up. I got in the accident. I should have been dead, but I'm still here right now. When the doctor thought it was over, I'm still here. I must be special to God. You must understand that you are functional and valuable and significant. And the second thing you need to know is that after folks kick you to the curb and leave you for dead, watch this in the text, God will bring the right people at the right time in the right way for your benefit. You see, sometimes there's so much dysfunction around you that other folk don't even want to be around you. You see, we want to know who a person is and what they can do for us before we help them. We want to have a return on our investment. We want to know what kind of hookup is in it for me. We don't want to be bothered with you unless you can do something for us. But notice in the text, David's men find this Egyptian man. They extend hospitality to the man. They didn't know his identity. He had nothing to offer them. He was half dead. But they were kind to him when he had nothing to bring to the table for them. Before they knew who he was, they were kind. And get this, he accepted their hospitality. I'm going to help somebody now. You see, when you're in a situation like this man was in, You can't afford the high price of your ego. You can't afford to be choosy and proud. He had been left behind to die, and he needed to take any kindness that anybody would show him. I'm trying to help somebody in here today, because there are those who permit their past wounds to cause them to shun any present kindness that anybody is trying to show them. They're suspicious of a new love because the old love broke their heart. They're suspect of one pastor because of the other pastor they used to have. They won't get involved in the new church because they were hurt in the last church. So they make people jump through hoops in order to prove themselves because of how somebody treated them back then. But let me help you today. You can't lose your mind over the one that left you, because you're going to need your mind for the one that's coming. Come on. You can't lose your mind over the job that let you go, because you're going to need your mind for the job that's on the way. This man was glad. He was just glad that somebody said hello. He was glad that somebody found him and wanted to help him. He was strengthened by what they did. He was revived. He was restored. God kept him alive long enough for these men to get to him and to help him and to restore him. You see, my sisters and brothers, God has a way of bringing the right people at the right time across your path, because they have the specific assignment of acting as instruments of renewal, revival, and restoration in your life. They don't have any hidden agendas. They're not out to get over on you. They don't want anything from you, but God has dispatched them into your life as instruments of revival and restoration, and they're not looking for anything in return. They just want to see you live. They just want to see you survive. They want to see you rise. They want to see you make it. They want to see you back in the game. They want to see you smile again. They want to see you love again. As a matter of fact, that might be why God providentially navigated your path to sit next to who you're sitting beside today. And you ought to turn to him real quick and say, neighbor, I don't want nothing from you. I just want to see you live. I want to see you succeed. I want to see you rise. I just want to see you happy. I want to see you fulfill your potential. I want to see you get back in the game. I want to see you become everything God wants you to be. Come on, shake your neighbor's hand and say, rise, neighbor. Go to the highest height. That's what I want to see. I don't have no agenda. I just want to see you happy. I just want to see you joyful. I ain't trying to get your telephone number. I ain't trying to line you up for a call later on tonight. I ain't trying to get over on you. I just want to see you do well. God will send folk that don't have any other agenda but to help you. No wonder Psalmist said, he'll make my enemy my footstool. He'll prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemy. Everybody else had passed him by, but God brought the right people at the right time to come and see about him. And at the right time, God will bring the right people. And when they show up, watch this, you need to forget about everybody who didn't help you. It won't even matter who don't like you, who didn't help you. God will have somebody in your life that can make a difference for you. So David's men didn't even know who this man was, but they provided for him. You see, it was only after he got better and got some strength that David even asked him, who you are. And then, watch this, the man testified, I'm a man from Egypt, and I belonged to an Amalekite. And we had been going around raiding several towns. We've been bum rushing everybody in our sight, looting everybody, burning down places. Now remember, David had just come with his men from Ziklag and found their city burned to the ground. Their wives and children had been kidnapped. And here's this man telling this story about us going around burning and looting places. And he said, we even burned down this town called Ziklag. We took all the women, all the children, all the money, all the food. Now he obviously did not know who David was, because if he knew who David was, he would have kept his mouth shut. But he kept on talking. And this is what you got to see, that God let that thing happen to the Egyptian the way that it happened because his life was necessary for David. He provided important information to David about David's enemies. And you got to understand, sometimes God allows things to happen in your life because your life is necessary for somebody else. Had you never gone to the hospital, you would have never been able to testify to that person on the other bed. Come on here, somebody. Had you never gone down that path, you never would have met up with that individual and been a blessing to their life. And so God has prepared you because you are needed for somebody else. Now, one fatal mistake that the enemy made here. This is my final point, and I'm going to go on home. I know in the Church of God in Christ, we have a habit of saying, I'm getting ready to close. Story is told about a young girl who was sitting in church and sitting with her father, and the preacher kept looking at his watch. She said, Daddy, what does that mean when he keeps looking at his watch? He said, well, in the Presbyterian and the Lutheran church, that means his sermon is just about over. In the Methodist church, it means he's got about 10 minutes of his sermon left. In the Baptist church and in the Church of God in Christ, it means absolutely nothing. As I come to my close, one fatal mistake that the enemy always makes is leaving you for dead instead of killing you. You see, he thought you would never recover. That's why he didn't take you out. He expected the bankruptcy, the rape, the divorce, the arrest, the abuse. He expected it to take you out. But the enemy should have killed you when he had a chance, because now it's too late. And on a larger scale, the Egyptian being left for dead had a purpose, because he was left in a particular place because God was up to something. The man couldn't die because he had information that David needed. You are the missing element in somebody's equation. Your life is necessary in somebody else's recovery. Somebody else needs what you have to give, and you can't die until you meet everybody that you're meant to meet. Some of the people who are with you are only going with you part of the way. Oh, my. You can stay with the people who are too tired or trifling, or you can go with the people who can see where you're trying to go and let the other people go. See, some folk will underestimate your worth, but don't ever underestimate your own value. Can I turn the corner here? $100 bill was in the Federal Reserve drawer right above the $1 bills, and the $1 bill was looking at the $100 bills, talking about the $100 bills, and said, you know what? We're the same. We're in the same drawer, in the same bank. We're made of the same ink. The $100 bill looked at the $1 bill and said, no, no, my brother, I've got a different value. I just came by here to ask some $100 folk why you still hanging out with $1 people. I just came here to ask some $100 sisters why you messing around with 50-cent brothers. Can I get some help in the house today? Don't ever underestimate your value, and don't ever diminish your worth. I got to get back to my text, but I think I need to stay there just for a moment. There was a little boy whose parents were rich. His mother had a lot of diamonds, and he went and got her diamonds and started playing marbles with them because he didn't understand the value of a diamond. I just came by here to tell you, when you're a little boy and you're immature, you don't understand the value of things, and you will treat diamonds like they're marbles. I came by here to tell some diamonds in the house today, don't ever let somebody treat your diamonds like they're marbles. Oh, bless the name of the Lord. This young man had value for God's people. David gave him an opportunity to lead him to the enemy, and the man was glad to have the opportunity to go back to the people who left him behind. The folk who left him for dead, who dropped him, dismissed him, duped him, discarded him. He had an opportunity to go back to them, and so here David was. He shows up after pursuing them, because God said to him, pursue them because you will recover all. I came by here to tell somebody that's lost some things in the building. Don't worry about it because God has it on lock. Don't worry about it because God has you in recovery mode. Don't worry about it because you can get everything that the enemy took from you. And I can imagine in my mind when they went to the camp where the Amalekites were. Can you see this Egyptian boy coming up there with David's army of men, stepping up before his master and say, hey, guess what? You left me for dead. You dropped me. You dismissed me. You mistreated me. You devalued me. But guess what? I'm still here. Somebody in the building today ought to lift up your hands and say, I'm still here. Oh, I may be broken, but I'm here. I may be wounded, but I'm here. I might be bleeding, but I'm here. I'm still coming. I'm still crying. I might be confused, but I'm here. I may be rejected, but I'm here. I know I'm not everything that I ought to be, but I'm still here. I'm still struggling with some habits and some hang-ups. I'm still wrestling with some anger issues and some forgiveness issues. I still slip up every now and then, but I'm still here. Well, I'm going to close for real here. Put me in E flat and we're going to go on home. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, they left me for dead. But look at me. I'm still here. Bless his name. I made it through the storm. It should have killed me, but I made it.
I shouldn't be here, but I got here. Medical science says I should have died. The legal advisor said I should have been locked up. My natural circumstances said I shouldn't have made it. I should be in a mental institution. I should still be strung out on drugs. The fire should have burned me to death. But I came to tell somebody here that I'm still here. Lord, I gotta go. And guess what? I don't even look like what I've been through. Bless his name. I've been through the fire and through the rain. Been through heartaches and had a little pain. I laid on my back and the tears flowed at night. I was down and out. I was depressed and despondent. Bless his name. But I'm here right now. And somebody in here ought to be shouting right now because you're still here. And let me remind you that when you walk through the fire, Lord God, I gotta go. The reason you're still here is because you never walked through alone. I heard, Lord have mercy, Jesus saying, I will be with you always. Is there anybody in here who can testify that when I thought I was alone, I felt him in the midnight hour when I was going through and nobody was on my side? The Lord, he picked me up. He turned me around. He placed my feet on solid ground. I'm still here, and I'm going to keep on moving. I'm going higher. I'm going deeper. I can't stop now because the Lord has purpose for me. Slap your neighbor high five and tell him I'm still here. You got swag in your walk, a smile on your face. You ought to jump up and say, I'm still here. They fired you for no reason. Bless his name. The unemployment ran out. The repo letter came. The foreclosure came. But somebody in here got the keys in your hand, and you can jump on your feet and say, I just came to tell somebody, don't give up, don't throw in the towel, don't go by the wayside. God is on your side, and if God be for me, he's more than the world against me. Yeah!
Well, friends, I pray that today's service was an inspiration to you and to your family, and I pray that the message empowered you in some special way. Listen, I want to invite you to support this ministry and to share with us. You can give using the Givelify app or using the PayPal app. You can go to our website, www.413hope.org, click the online giving link and give through that method, or you can give through the Cash app. Our cash tag is $Spring of Hope. Your gifts and donations are very much appreciated. Listen, I want to remind you of our Wednesday night virtual Bible study at 7:30 p.m. And as always, you can meet us here in the sanctuary at 35 Alden Street, Springfield, Massachusetts at 11 o'clock a.m. on Sunday morning, or catch our live stream on YouTube or on Facebook. Until the next time I talk to you and you talk to me, always remember, God loves you, and so do I.